Hi, this is Jeff, your ProtoPie expert, once again answering your ProtoPie questions. Today's question comes from John. John asks, I want to animate a line moving in a zigzag motion as it appears on a line graph. Now, you might think this isn't possible in ProtoPie as there's no line drawing tool. You may think you might have to use a different piece of software, make yourself an animation, and then import that as a movie into ProtoPie. But I'm going to show you how to do this 100% using ProtoPie's built-in tools, and we're going to use a trick. In my pie here, I've got the beginnings of what looks like a line graph. We've got our vertical axis, our horizontal axis, and we got the start button. We use the start button to start our animation, but the first thing we need to learn how to do is how to draw a line. If we take a look at our shape tools, you're going to see we have a rectangle tool and we have an oval tool, but no line drawing tool. The trick that I'm going to show you is we're going to make a rectangle, and let's just draw one right here, and we'll call this segment 1. And the trick I'm going to show you here is I'm going to make this 200 pixels wide and 1 pixel in height. And you can already see that it looks like a line. And this is essentially how you can make a line in ProtoPie. Let's make the line a little bit nicer. I'm actually going to turn off the fill and turn on the border. Let's first choose a color. Let's choose this nice blue here. And then I'm going to have the line positioned on the center of the edge of the shape. And this allows me to set a width that scales out from the middle of the line. And let's use 10 pixels here. And something that's nice on lines is rounded end caps. And we can do that as well by adjusting the radius. Because the height of our rectangle is 1 pixel, anything greater than 0 will give us perfectly rounded corners. I'm just going to set it to 1. And now you're going to see I have a nice line with rounded end caps. Now what we want to do is we want to have several segments like this, and we want them in different angles. So one kind of going up like this, and then maybe down a bit, and then up a bit more, and down, and then up, and then maybe climbing up a little bit more. So we're going to make a few copies of this and then adjust the rotation of each of these. So what I can do is I can set a rotation value. Negative values rotate the shape counterclockwise, positive will rotate it clockwise. In this case, I want it to go up and to the right, so I'm going to rotate it counterclockwise. So let's try negative 15 degrees. And there we go. Let's move it down here as our starting point. Now I'm going to make a copy of this, and I'm going to do this by holding the Alt key on my keyboard and just dragging it. And then I'm going to use ProtoPie's built-in snap feature to position that exactly on the end of the first segment. And now let's adjust the length of this and the rotation. So let's change this to 100 pixels in length, and we'll rotate it in the positive direction. So we'll give it, say, 20 degrees. Great. Let's make another copy. Hold down Alt and position it. Let it snap right onto the end there. We want it rotating in a negative direction. So let's try negative 30. And let's make this longer again. So we'll give this another width of 200. So now you can see our line's going to go up and then a bit down and then a bit back up again. And then let's have it come back down again. So we'll make another copy here. And once again, I'm going to let it snap right onto the end of that line. We'll give it a positive angle here. Actually, let's make it a little bit more shallow here. Let's try 10 degrees and make it shorter again. Maybe say 100 pixels. And we'll make another copy of this. Let it snap right on there. We'll give it a negative 40 degree upward angle and maybe give this 200 pixels in length again. And let's do one more segment. And we'll snap that there and let's give it a really steep angle, maybe negative 70 degrees. There we go. So our animation is going to start from the bottom and it's going to continue to this point, come down a little bit, and then come up a little bit, down a little bit, up, and then really climb up to its end point right up here. So how do we animate this? Because these are all rectangles at 1 pixel height, we can animate their width, much the same way you might animate anything else. But the first thing we want to do is we want to have our animation in a start point. And essentially, we want all of these segments to be 0 width. Now, I could just do this right on the stage here, and we'll give it a width of 0. But you can see by doing that, that actually makes it disappear, and it's hard to work with, and I don't see where anything is anymore. So I'm going to undo that. And instead, I'm going to use the start trigger to preset the scale of all of these items at the start of the prototype when you preview it. So I'm going to use the start trigger. And let's use a scale for segment 1. We're going to set the scale to 0 pixels in width, and I'm going to set the duration to 0. All right, now when I preview this, you're going to see that that first segment is invisible because it has a width of 0, but that's pretty good. And let's now do that for all of our other segments. And I'm going to rename this scale S1, and then let's duplicate that. And I did that with Command D on my keyboard, by the way, or Control D if you're on Windows. And we'll configure this for segment 2. And let's rename that to segment 2. Duplicate this, make you segment 3. Duplicate this for segment 4. Duplicate this for segment 5. And duplicate this one more time for segment 6. Now when I preview this, I have nothing on here because all of my line segments are set to 0 width. Now what I want to happen here is I want to click the start button and I want my animation to start. Let's configure our animation. I want it to happen when I tap the start button, so let's add a tap trigger, and we want that on the start button here. And let's start animating our line segments. I'm going to use a scale response, and we want to scale segment 1, and we're going to scale it back to its original size of 200 pixels. And if you forget what the original size was, that's the benefit of leaving it on the stage like this. You can just click on it and just take a look in the inspector. I made this easy, so the long segments are 200 pixels, the short segments are all 100. We just have to remember 100 and 200, and we're fine. Let's go back to our scale, and here now is where I can configure how quickly this animation happens. Right now it's happening over 0.2 seconds, and if I preview this and I hit the start button, you're going to see that line segment drew really quickly. I want this to go a little slower, so I'm going to change the duration here to 1 second. And now when I preview this and I press the start button, there we go, it draws over 1 second. You might have also noticed, let me reset this, you might have also noticed that it started off slow, sped up, and then slowed down again. This is something called easing, and it's a common animation term, and you can control how the animation happens. Ease in and ease out makes it slow at the beginning, slow at the end, and moderately fast in the middle. Ease in makes it slow at the beginning and then speeds up towards the end. Ease out makes it slow at the end and moderately fast at the beginning. Linear doesn't change the velocity at all, and for this animation, that's what I want. So I'm going to choose linear. And you're going to see when I preview this now, the line will just draw at a constant speed. And it's going to make more sense when you see the rest of it. It draws just constantly. It's just going to look like it's just continually drawing as we go along here. So let's now configure the next segment. Let's rename this first of all, because this is for segment 1. And I'm going to duplicate that for segment 2. Since this segment is half as long, it's only 100 pixels long, I want to scale to 100 pixels. And I want it to go at the same speed. So if I lift this at 1 second, let's preview this for a second. Oops, let me fix that. I need this to be on segment 2. There we go, let's preview this now. And now they happen at the same time because I haven't changed the delay on the animation. But you can see this line appears to draw faster than this one because it's got to cover a longer distance in the same amount of time. So in order for this to look like it's the same speed, we're going to change the duration of this to be half the time it took to draw this one because it's only drawing half the length. So we're going to set that one to 0.5 seconds. Now the other thing I want to happen is I don't want this to happen at the same time as my first segment. Right now they both draw at the same time. And that's not what we want. What we want to happen is the first segment to draw and then the second segment to draw. So we can do that with our timeline. And I'm going to just stretch this out so you can see the timeline over here. Right now we've got these two bars, and this represents the animation for the first segment, and this represents the animation for the second segment. And what we want is we want the start of the animation, which is the left end of the block, to be at the right end of this one. And I can just drag this out, and ProtoPie will snap it right to the end of there. And now when I preview this, we're going to see that the segments happen one after another, and that's exactly what we're looking for. Now we can just repeat this for the other segments. I will duplicate this for segment 3. And this is again a 200 pixel. This is one of the longer segments. We want to go to 200 pixels and over 1 second. And we'll drag this out to there. I can also set the start delay down here if I just want to do it exactly. I know it's going to be 1.5 seconds. And we'll duplicate this one again. This is for segment 4. And this is our shorter segments. That's going to 100 pixels over half a second. And I'm going to drag this out to snap right there. And let's rename this to say S4. And let's duplicate this again. This will be for S5. I'll choose segment 5 from the dropdown. This is again a longer one happening over 1 second. And I'll drag this out to snap to the end of there. And the last one here is for segment 6. And it's the same thing. I'm just going to drag this out to snap there and choose segment 6 from the dropdown. And now when I preview this, I should have my full animation complete. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And there we go. That's your full animation. Now, there are different ways you can do this. You don't have to do just the line segment. You can embellish this a little bit more, and I have a couple of other options that show it. This is what I call the supercharged version. And in this case, it's going to draw the line segments, but when it gets to a change point, it's going to have these dots appear. And we get to the end, we're going to see the star appear. So if I preview this, and I press start, you're going to see the dots appear on each of the line segments as we go. And we get to the end, we get the star just shows up there. And this is just using the timeline in exactly the same way. And I'm just sequencing all of the animations. So the first item we have here is the first segment, it animates. And then we have the first dot appears, and at the same time, the second segment starts to animate. And by the way, these don't have to be in the order you see here. I like this for organization, but really I could move these anywhere in the stack if I had this down here. It doesn't mean that it happens after the star. Where it is on the timeline here, it determines where it animates. So now when I preview this and we press start, you're going to see that it still animates in the right order. There you go, easy as pie. If you've run into a snag with any of your pies and you'd like to ask us for help, take a look at the link in the description below. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.